Let me have a go.
No way, no way.
Actually, let me have a go because it's my video. The Spanish Inquisition was a judicial institution that lasted from 1478 to 1834, established by Ferdinand II of Aragon and Isabella I of Castile to maintain Catholic orthodoxy in their respective kingdoms. Now, I would go on to explain the origins of the institution, but this is classic Spanish history, and I don't want to bore you with a little research that may not be accurate, and many words and key terms that, being the typical American ass that I am, I know I simply cannot pronounce. To make this easier, I'm going to give a quick summary on the origins of the Inquisition before going on to talk about the Inquisition itself. In 1478, Pope Sixtus IV authorized the Spanish Inquisition to help the Catholic monarchs Ferdinand and Isabella enforce religious conformity. On November 1st, the Pope began a decree that would allow them to begin the work to combat heresy in their kingdoms. This was intentionally done to root out heretics among Jewish and Muslim converts to Catholicism. In other words, it was created to investigate Jews and Muslims who claimed to have converted, but were still practicing their former faith. Ferdinand and Isabella viewed religious diversity as a threat, and the Inquisition was how they were going to enforce religious conformity. The word Inquisition actually means trial, and there were several of them between the 12th and 19th centuries. But this Inquisition was unique for many reasons. One reason was that the accused was required to testify without a lawyer or anyone else present. This is different from a tribunal, a type of trial where the judge or judges tries the accused and passes judgment altogether. If the accused did not testify, the judge took this as proof of his guilt. Others could also testify against him, including family members, relatives, criminals, other heretics, pretty much anyone else could testify against him, and he wasn't told who his accusers were. Another reason was money, because the Spanish government made a huge profit off of confiscating the property of those who were convicted of heresy. In 1481, around 20,000 converts, or conversos in Spanish, confessed to heresy, hoping to avoid torture and execution. Inquisitors decreed that their penitence required them to name other heretics, and by the end of the year, hundreds of conversos were burned at the stake. By this time, Pope Sixtus had heard the complaints of conversos who had fled to Rome, and had declared that the Inquisition was too harsh, too violent, and too unfair. In 1482, he appointed a council to take command of the institution. Meanwhile, clergyman Tomás de Torquemada you know what? Fuck it, let's just call him Tommy Torpedo. Was named Inquisitor General and established courts across Spain. Tommy was a Spanish friar, and in August of 1483, he was appointed Grand Inquisitor for Castile and Leon, the very first in Spanish history. On October 17th, his power extended throughout Aragon, Catalonia, Valencia, and Majorca. In 1484, he promulgated 28 articles for the guidance of inquisitors, and things were extended to include not just heresy, but also sorcery, sodomy, blasphemy, polygamy, and other various offenses that make God very mad. Torture was used as the main method to get conversos to confess their crimes. This not only applied to Jewish people, but later Muslims, mystics, Protestants, and critics of the church. These methods were also very mild, such as strapido, hanging by the wrists, choca, a method similar to waterboarding, and porto, or the rack. What was the rack? Well, it was a big friggin' yoga machine that inquisitors used to break the heretics. The maximum amount of torture a person could endure could only be about 15 minutes, and could only be applied twice in 1% of cases. If the accused confessed under torture, it was inadmissible, and a valid confession had to be repeated freely later. Over 2,000 people are estimated to have died in the Spanish Inquisition, though the number of executions during this time was rather small compared to other contemporary tribunals. Inquisitors began using and exerting effective Catholic propaganda. Rival European powers, like Great Britain and the Netherlands, who were both Protestant, weaponized the Inquisition, exaggerating its methods in art and literature to portray Spain as a barbaric society of people. This became known as the Black Legend. Rival empires leveraged the Inquisition's dark history to distract from their own intense persecutions and colonial practices. Soon, the Inquisition began to spread throughout the rest of Europe, the Mediterranean, and all other territories controlled by the Spanish crown. Following the Granada conquest of 1492, the Spanish tribunal also expanded to North Africa, and by 1569, it had officially reached the New World and into Latin and South American countries like Lima and New Spain. What's that? You've never heard of either of those? Well, you may recognize them better as Peru, specifically the capital, and what is now Mexico. In 1498, following the death of Tommy Torpedo, Spanish Dominican friar Diego Diza was appointed the second Grand Inquisitor of Spain. Diza's reign was described as being far more brutal, as during his reign, over 1,660 people were burned alive. Due to his extreme methods, Diza's reign was met with considerable criticism, particularly during his prior role as Archbishop of Seville, and because of this, he was replaced by Francisco Jimenez in 1507. As mentioned before, the Inquisition began initially targeting Jewish conversos, but soon began targeting other religions, including Protestants. By the 1530s and 1540s, underground Protestant and reformist groups had formed among intellectuals and elites in cities like Seville and Valladolid. At the height of the French Revolution in 1808, Napoleon conquered Spain and officially abolished the Spanish Inquisition during his occupation. However, following his defeat in 1814, King Ferdinand VII reclaimed the Spanish throne and periodically reinstated it before intense liberal opposition throughout Spain led to its suspension in 1820 during the Liberal Triennium. In later years, the Inquisition saw many suspensions and revivals before finally being abolished. But by 1823, its power was largely fractured, much like video rental stores when streaming was on the rise. In 1823, the Inquisition saw a brief re-emergence, with the very last victim being a schoolmaster, Cayetano Ripoll, in July 1826. Following the death of Ferdinand VII in 1834, Queen Maria Cristina took the throne and forcibly shut down the remaining tribunals, ending the Inquisition for good after hundreds of difficult years. So what is the takeaway? I'll just say it, I really have no idea, and making a perfect one for subject matter this dark and this heavy is honestly very difficult. I'll give it this. Humanity's definitely never been at its best with religious conformity, and the Spanish Inquisition is no exception. Even though it started out as being for kind of a good cause, it quickly escalated into something far more vicious that it shouldn't have been. But given that it was going on roughly around the same time as the Protestant Reformation, you can't really say that you didn't see it coming. It's a shame, but it is history, and if there's anything we can take away from this, it's that Spanish history is far more complicated than most people give it credit for. But that's not a bad thing. If anything, it shows that it has had a huge influence, and honestly, I think they'll continue having a huge influence for years to come, with absolutely no relation to Mexico whatsoever. Wait! Before this video ends, I just want to thank you guys so much for watching these and staying subscribed to my channel. Let me tell you, I really love doing this, and it's not always easy because these videos take time to make. Between writing and editing and doing research, it's not always easy, and I also want these to be as accurate as possible, even though it isn't the most valid well, I shouldn't say that, but there are other channels that you could go to for more specific info, but I really want to make sure that these I make the best content that I can. And you also may have noticed that the audio is a little bit clearer on this. That's because, for a couple of reasons. I got a new phone, and this is the first video where I record the audio directly into the microphone as opposed to doing it on a separate app and downloading it. So that's one thing. Also, I really try my hardest to make these the best quality videos I can because I love making stuff that I'm interested in, and even when I'm making videos on content that I'm not interested in, I still want to make it as best quality as possible. So I really appreciate you guys for staying tuned in, and I really hope you guys enjoy as I make more of these. So that said, goodbye, and well, I can't say have a good summer because summer's almost over, but anyway, take care. Also, as one last quick note, if the audio sounds a little distorted, my apologies, but you heard the theme. and you probably weren't expecting me to share personal stuff with you guys. That said, nobody expected the Inquisition either.